Alright guys, in the follow-up to the previous section, I have opened the Visual Studio Code space, and now I want to make the file and folder of the JavaScript project and start working with it. So at first I hit Control N in order to be able to work with the body of the HTML5. I need to save this file at first. Okay, and after that we need to install some extensions related to HTML, JavaScript and CSS. Let's check the extensions briefly before starting our project so that you get to know how things are. Where I move the cursors of my mouse, there is a section called extensions, and there is a shortcut key, the combination key, Control Shift and X. Using a combination of these three, you can access these extensions. I click on it, the extensions that we are going to need to work with JavaScript, HTML and CSS codes. I need to explain how we install them. At first, you need to install an extension called HTML snippets. You need to have it installed. That includes all the necessary requirements that you are going to need to work with HTML5. Okay, let's see. The second option is JavaScript ES6, which is JavaScript ECMAScript 6. Yeah, ES stands for ECMAScript and it's version 6. That in our process we are going to need this snippet ADN, and we are going to work with them. Okay, and let's see, the next option is an extension called Live Server, which is very practical with a license. All the developers that work under MIT license and serve the programming society is very useful for them. This license is a free one, and it provides you with open source extensions without having to pay anything. Okay, or without having to do anything. So it is a very useful extension, and you get to know how it works exactly on the project. It's actually a tool, a medium for getting other extensions on our projects. And finally we get to another extension called Beautify. This Beautify provides you with clean code, and as you see, you may have noticed that most of the frameworks, especially Bootstrap in this case, when you see the CSS and JavaScript files on it, that is, when you see the CSS and JavaScript files on your Bootstrap framework, reading them is really hard. Of course, I need to mention that this is not the case with all the frameworks. Some of the frameworks, when you use your codes on the Visual Studio Code, the codes are all one after the other in order to make a break between the codes and make them readable. Using this extension, you will easily be able to arrange your code on your files, and if you wanted to make any changes, you can do it very easily using the Beautify extension. So that's what it actually does. And finally, there is another extension called Auto Rename Tag. This Auto Rename Tag, as you notice on this page, where you have written a div tag, and this div tag is going to be changed to another name. Quite easily you will be able to, by clicking on it, check out the beginning and the ending of the div tag. And now pay attention to the div tag over here. In fact, what happens is that it makes an operation happen automatically and is very useful on the project, and it can be easily used. And of course, we have other useful extensions such as Bootstrap, which is a very useful framework, version 3 and 4, which I have already installed. And we also are going to work with it. It was a summary of the extension. You can have any extension that you are going to need and work with on your project. So it was a brief explanation on them and how we work with them. All right, in order to start work, first I need 3 files that I need to make. What are these 3 files? The HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files. Very well. My first file is here. I need to save it first. So in fact, what I do in the address of our tutorials chapter, right there, here I make a file called index and save it. I have already done this, so it gives me already exist message, but I want to do it again, so I just replace it with a new file, so that I will be able to have another file beside it. What is the second file that we need? Style.css, the appearance of the project, the file that contains all the details about the appearance. Controller style.css, again yes. And finally the last file, the file that contains the JavaScript codes of our project, script.js. Sorry, I said CSS. I made a mistake. Script.js. Very well. Here I want to use the body of the HTML5. When you install the element plugin on the Visual Studio codes, you will be able to use the body of the HTML file in a thorough fashion. Of course, the extension of HTML snippet allows you to do this automatically without having to enter anything manually. So here I type, let me close this first. Okay, HTML file. Here I just need to enter to have the body of the HTML file made for me. I change the document. Alright, let's change the name. Change the name to, and finally what I want to do is first what I do is, okay, I need to make a connection between the body of CSS and script.js. So with the body of HTML, I get help from CSS file. I type link, and here it provides me with all sorts of links. If I were to use CSS, I just need to click on this document .css link, as you see over here, to have it written. Of course, a part of it has not been written. The data type that I write on myself, I do it on myself. Let me finish it. I say, which type is it? Of text type and CSS file. The name of the item is a style.css. When I hit it, it opens it for me. The connection exists and has been formed. And finally, the script file. I just need to write the script over here. Okay, script src like this. I give it file script. Okay, .js, just like that. Of course, the first S needs to be small. Okay, yeah, it connects with it just like that. But there is a point here that needs to be taken into account. Okay, the script codes that have a JavaScript format are not set in the head section here. You will, if you do, you will run into a problem when loading the site. Here we are not dealing with a large project, but because we can learn the basics of the game by doing it right, try to stick to the rules, so that when they get loaded after the main body, and it doesn't affect the speed of your project. So up to here we have made the body in this format. Now we go back to the map of the project and see what items we are going to need for our project. All right, here we have a background. That is, we need to have a background in the standard CSS with a color code that there is here in front of us is concerned with a space where these elements are going to be. In these containers, we are going to set such elements as p tags, the functions, the IDs that we would have, and they would all be included. And when we see them in the default mode, well, it looks very disorganized. In order to improve the structure and have a better appearance, we use the CSS language. So at first we need a background, the blue background. Then we are going to need container, the white space. Thirdly, we are going to need the buttons that we have over here. That is the text and the operations that we are going to perform on these buttons. So I go back to the Visual Studio space and start including these items on our projects. Okay, I need a tag, and tag is called, let's define a div here. In this div I want to set an ID. The ID is called container. In this container I am going to have the body of the space. Now I have the body. The second item that I need is the space that is going to be used in this container as the operations of calculations. I call it calculator. I make a div with the ID. Okay, that's it. Sorry. Right, I call it calculator. Well, and finally I close the div, and that's up to here. The next item that I need, I call it result. The space that I have here, I enter 74 here times for multiplication. As you see now, it has been sent to a tag. I have called it history. The 74 times has been saved on its memory, and this section that we have where we saw the 74 is going to show us the result. In fact, we want to replace this in between two inner HTMLs that we have. We won't use other tag, so I need to have a result here, and finally a history for saving the initial values. These values in fact are erasable. They can be easily changed and wiped out. Alright, now we need to write div or div. In this div I set an ID called result. Okay, where I have the result, and now inside this result, let's see, I need to have two IDs. One of them is the history and the other one is the output. So I say div, I pass the ID to it, and I call it, let's see, history. Okay, and inside this I said p tag. Okay, called value history. I tell it set p as ID and say history dash value. History dash value. That's it for this section. And now I go back to the result. In the result I say div, okay, ID. I say output. Alright, finally I define a p tag inside it with the ID output value. Okay, output value. That's up to here. So the main body of this calculator has been designed, and now we get to the keyboard that we noticed on the calculator, that is over here. Okay, and the buttons that we have here, the operators that we need to have here, we are going to analyze them one after the other. So in the next video we are going to pay more attention to this part of the project.